The Cubs fall to last place in the NL Central after a third straight loss to the Cincinnati Reds. Can they get back on track today? The Cubs are in a downward spiral, not only in the division, but as they head towards the trade deadline. Could they be shifting completely from buyers to sellers? We're going to get into that, as well as an injury update on both Seiya Suzuki and Nico Hoerner, who were not in the lineup yesterday. That and more on the Cubs baseball channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Jump in the comments section. Let us know how you're feeling about this Cubs team who is on a struggle as of late. So here is your invitation to our show. What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday to you. This is the Cubs baseball channel. My name is Anthony Pasquale on Twitter at ant_Pasquale3. Thank you guys for joining us to recap some Cubs baseball and chop it up about our favorite team. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of good news to discuss today. The Cubs are now officially in last place in the NL Central after their third straight loss to the Cincinnati Reds yesterday. The Reds beat the Cubs 4-3, despite the Cubs out hitting the Reds 10-6 in the game. The Cubs were the only team with an error. No shocker there. The defense has been horrendous, not only as of late, but this entire season. And just in general, the Cubs are trending in the wrong direction. Obviously, have dropped from second place to last place in this division over the last week. But even deeper than that, there's just no redeeming quality about this team right now. For a while, it was the starting pitching, which is still okay, but it's not excellent anymore. And because it's not excellent, the Cubs haven't been able to overcome a offense that cannot seem to put the ball in play with runners in scoring position, and a bullpen that is still one of the worst in the league. Not to mention the Cubs are dead last in the league in terms of running into outs on the bases, and their defense has been subpar all season long. So no facet of the game is currently clicking for them. Starting pitching, relief pitching, hitting, situational hitting, base running, defense. All six of those things are trending in the wrong direction. And as a result, the Cubs are in last place in the division. And as we're nearing the middle of June and looking forward toward July, the All-Star break and the trade deadline, this Cubs team has a lot of questions to answer over the course of the next few months. A glass half full guy like myself, hopefully, is thinking that a run like last season comes and the Cubs force the front office to buy, and hopefully they buy a little bit more. But the fact of the matter is that this roster has a lot of holes. And Jed Hoyer, who I think has done a pretty good job since taking over for Theo Epstein, he kind of took the mess that Theo gave him and turned it into quality prospects like Pete Crow Armstrong and Kevin Alcantara, Alexander Canario. I'm talking about guys that they got back for Baez, Bryant, and Rizzo. But Hoyer took a team that last year was one game away from making the playoffs. They missed the playoffs by one game in the standings. They took a team and they pretty much didn't add to it. They lost Marcus Stroman. They added Shōta Imanaga. They got Cody Bellinger back and decided to keep him there. Michael Busch was hoping to be an upgrade from Eric Hosmer and Trey Mancini, but they really didn't do a whole lot to this team. And all they did was they went out and made a splash, but the splash was for a manager. And I think the thought was that the Cubs played so many close games last year that could have gone their way. You substitute a great manager instead of an okay one, and upgrading from Ross to Counsell, and you get this great manager, and those losses turn into wins, and you make the playoffs comfortably. Unfortunately, that doesn't account for an offense that had a lot of holes last year being even worse this year. Every single player has regressed. Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki, Patrick Wisdom, everybody. Yan Gomes is a great example as well. Nico Hoerner. Everybody has been worse this year than they were last year. So you're looking at a team that won, 82, 83 games last year, missed the playoffs by one game, and you're thinking that this manager turns you into an 88-win team maybe, and that should get the job done. But if those players don't perform to those levels that they did last year, that manager isn't going to be able to solve everything. He's not some sort of savior. He's just supposed to right the ship And if the ship is sinking, there's not much he can do. And that's kind of where the Cubs are right now, trending toward potentially selling at the trade deadline. And I think Mick and I will talk about this later on this week about buying or selling and what that market might look like. But this Cubs team is not constructed well to sell. The last 2 times the Cubs have sold, I should say, they were constructed very well for it. Obviously, Bryant, Rizzo, Baez, Peterson, all those guys that they dished off, Kimbrel, Tepera, Chafin, they were all to be free agents. And that's why the Cubs did a really good job at getting rid of those guys and getting guys in return. Same with the year after that, Michael Givens, David Robertson, a bunch of relievers that they parted ways with. And then they were even set up that way for Ian Happ before he was extended, and then Cody Bellinger at the deadline last year if they needed to. But then obviously they decided to buy at the deadline instead. This year, there's not too many candidates. I know a lot of you guys in the comment sections get in and say, trade Patrick Wisdom, trade Matt Mervis, trade this, trade that. Those guys have no value right now. Patrick Wisdom has struck out 6 of his last 9 at-bats. Like, that's not a guy that contending teams are going to be chomping at the bit to trade for and give away valuable major league talent that the Cubs are going to be looking for. So those are guys that you're not really looking to yield too much of a return back. The one interesting name is Cody Bellinger because he can opt out after the season, which would make him an interesting trade target should the Cubs turn into full-on sellers. But beyond Bellinger and a few relievers, the Cubs don't have much to offer. So you got to hope this team turns it around because they're built better to buy than they are to sell this season. And that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on as we progress through June. It hasn't been a great start. Hopefully the Cubs can turn it around. We keep talking about how they're going to turn it around and they've got a soft schedule and they've got so many bad teams coming up. But they haven't been able to step on the gas and pull the trigger in any way, shape, or form. Hopefully that comes soon, but I keep saying hopefully. I can't tell you I'm counting on it. This team hasn't looked like they have that life, that spark to go on a winning streak, to beat a team by more than 3 runs. It just hasn't been pretty for the Cubs as of late, and I'm officially, we'll call it right here, I'm hitting the panic button. I'm very worried about this team. I have been optimistic. You guys know I'm a glass half full type of guy, but this team is quickly turning into a team that maybe this isn't a rut. Maybe this is just a bad team. And as much as it pains me to say, until they start looking like a better baseball team, I'm just going to have to call it like I see it. They just have not been good for more than a month. And it's hurting their playoff chances desperately. Early in the season, we were talking about all those blown losses and how by the end of the year, you'd love to have those wins back. And maybe that'll be the difference between making or missing the playoffs. Right now, it just looks like they're just going to keep losing games. Like, these aren't even really games they're blowing as much. They're just not competing the way they were. The offense builds fake rallies when they're down 4-1 to lose 4-3 or 5-4. That's how it's been the last few games. Or they get rocked. And it's tough. It's tough to watch, and hopefully it turns around soon because this team needs to get hot and make a push. Otherwise, we could be looking at a 3rd sell-off in the last 4 seasons, which is disgusting for Chicago Cubs baseball. As we move forward with this roster, obviously Seiya Suzuki and Nico Hoerner are banged up. The Cubs cleared up a few things before the game yesterday. Seiya Suzuki's injury was not an oblique injury. He's sore from being hit on a throw as he was running from first to second. So he is day-to-day. Nico Hoerner has a fracture in his hand from getting hit by a pitch, a small fracture. According to specialists, they are all right with Nico Hoerner playing through it once the swelling goes down, but he's still pretty swollen, and that's why he did not play yesterday. The issue is the Cubs are now playing 2 guys short on a team that's already pretty thin. It requires guys like David Bodie and Patrick Wisdom to play against lefties, and it means your bench really is only Pete Armstrong because one of the guys is a catcher, and A, you're never going to pinch hit him because the catchers have been so bad, and B, you can't use him in any other position but catching. So you're really working with a one-man bench right now, which is something that the Cubs did a few weeks back when Hoerner had the tight hamstring, and it was really hard for the Cubs to play matchups and pinch hit guys when they wanted to because they had nobody to do so with. So I think the Cubs need to make a decision on Seiya Suzuki and Nico Hoerner soon. I'd imagine Seiya Suzuki is back within a couple days, and Nico Hoerner goes on some sort of 10-day or 15-day IL, and the Cubs will bring up either Luis Vazquez, who I would like to see up, or Miles Mastrobuoni, who is another middle infield type guy, left-handed bat, has some speed, but has not hit well at the big leagues. If Suzuki does have to go on the IL, we talked about it the other day. Brennan Davis and Alexander Canario both hit righty like Suzuki, so they'd make the most sense to come up. Both on the 40-man roster. Canario has been up this season already. Davis has not, but Davis is a guy that has been hitting very well in the minor leagues and deserves a chance sometime soon. Another option, the Cubs could clear a 40-man spot by moving Nick Madrigal from the 15-day IL to the 60-day IL with his broken hand. That would free up a spot on the 40-man potentially for a guy like Owen Caissie, who the Cubs could bring up because they definitely need a spark on the offensive side of things. I want to get into this too. I know Mick's not a big analytics guy, and I'm not saying it's the end-all be-all. It's a good tool to use, but I think it's a good tool to use depending on your players, right? Like if you're facing a lefty, Craig Counsell seems to automatically pencil in all of his right-handers. He gets in Yan Gomes. He gets Nick Madrigal in back when he was healthy. Yesterday, Patrick Wisdom and David Bodie get in the lineup, partially because they need to, because Seiya Suzuki and Nico Hoerner were hurt, but they did the same thing 2 games ago against a lefty as well. And here's my thing. I understand that typically you want righties to bat against lefties, but like Patrick Wisdom and David Bodie are not world beaters at the plate. So like, how can you tell me with a straight face that those guys are better options against anybody than a guy like Seiya Suzuki or Pete Crow Armstrong or Mike Tauchman, some of these other lefties that have been benched in those scenarios? It's something that bothers me a little bit because Patrick Wisdom has batted 9 times the last 2 games out of the leadoff spot, struck out 6 times, left a ton of guys on base. It's one thing to get him in the lineup, but leading off, that means that's the guy that you want to bat the most in the ball game. He came up in huge spot after huge spot this weekend and has done nothing but put the ball in the catcher's mitt. It's been atrocious to watch that. That's not what we deserve as Cubs fans. And Craig Counsell goes so by the book with these analytics. And obviously, there's some success to it. A lot of teams do it, but sometimes you just have to think Mike Tauchman batting first gives our team a better chance to win. I don't care what the numbers say. Patrick Wisdom can hit. Mike Tauchman can hit. That's how it looks right now. And that's the guy you want up in the 9th inning with a runner on 3rd and you need to put the ball in play. That's the guy you want up with the bases loaded. I understand Wisdom has some pop. I like his fit on the roster. He cannot be your leadoff hitter. If you want him in the game against a lefty, have him bat 6th or 7th or 5th even. And I understand some guys are banged up. But if that's the lineup you roll out when you're on a 2-game losing streak, and if you lose, you become the last place team, you are not seriously trying to win ball games. If those guys are hurt, bring up other guys. I'd rather have Alexander Canario. I'd rather have Brennan Davis at the plate over Patrick Wisdom. I'd rather have even Owen Caissie. I know he's a lefty. I'd rather have him. Pete Crow Armstrong. How is he not in the lineup when 2 guys are banged up? It's frustrating. It's frustrating because the Cubs deserve to have a team with better players. You can blame Craig Counsell for this, but the fact of the matter is he's making with what he's got. And Jed Hoyer did not do enough to improve this roster. He banked on a manager to get the Cubs more wins if the team performed exactly how they did last year. The team has regressed a little bit, every single player from last year. The manager can't save that. It's on Jed Hoyer to give the team better players. Matt Chapman was out there. Rhys Hoskins was out there. That could solve your first and third base issue. And the list goes on and on. But another quiet offseason from Jed Hoyer is seeming to bite him in the butt now. So you hope as the trade deadline looms, maybe some big moves or big news needs to break because this Cubs team needs a spark and needs one bad if they have their eyes on postseason baseball in 2024. Another big thing, the Cubs have played 26 one-run games over the last couple of months. And that's way too many. And obviously, they're around 500 in those games. You thought maybe having a better manager would mean you win more of those one-run games. But the fact of the matter is if your team if you're offensively unable to give out a knockout punch and on the pitching side of things, you're unable to preserve a lead, you're going to lose a lot of one-run games. And that's been kind of the story of the Cubs season up to this point. A little bit of positive news. Jordan Wicks looked strong in his return. He pitched 3 1/3 innings, gave up 1 run via a home run, had a couple of strikeouts, only allowed 3 hits. Good to see him back. He relieved Ben Brown, who took the loss last night. I will say one guy trending in the right direction, Dansby Swanson, had 2 hits the other night, 3 hits yesterday. Starting to drive the ball a little bit, couple of homers in the last week as well. Hopefully a hot streak is coming from Dansby, and hopefully another couple of players, because this offense definitely needs a boost. We talked about this already. Cubs dropped their 3rd straight to the Reds. That's now 15 losses against a weak NL Central. This team simply needs to be better, and it starts with beating the teams that you play the most: the Cardinals, the Brewers, the Reds, and the Pirates. Cubs have been bad against them lately. Need to turn that around if you want to make a push toward the playoffs here in 2024. Cubs at Reds today, 12:40 at Great American Ballpark. The Cubs need their stopper to be their stopper on the mound today. Shōta Imanaga, 5-1 on the season with a 1.88 ERA. Can he right the ship? It's been a bumpy couple of starts since the Cubs gave him 10 days off. He got rocked a couple of times, couldn't pitch through a couple of errors his last time out, hasn't gone as deep into the ball game as of late. Against the Reds, a team that strikes out a ton, I'm excited to see Shōta Imanaga hopefully get things back on the right track for the Cubs as they head into next week in Tampa Bay against a pretty good Rays team who is in a very tough division. Frankie Montas on the mound for the Reds. He's 3-4 with a 4.00 ERA. Only 2 Cubs have at-bats against them in their career. Cody Bellinger is 1 for 3, and Yan Gomes is 0 for 4. So it'll be most of the Cubs' first time seeing Montas and hopefully getting some hits against him as the Cubs look to get back in the W column and get out of the cellar in the NL Central. But that'll do it for us today on the Cubs Baseball channel. Again, my name is Anthony Pasquale. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us, talking some Cubs baseball. Got a little heated, and it's just because you and I, as Cubs fans, know we deserve better than what's been happening, and hopefully today it starts to get better. Give us a like, subscribe, jump in the comments, ring the bell, let us know how you're feeling, and hopefully we get to sing some Go Cubs Go today. Go Cubs.